Some argue that though abuses were indeed committed during martial law, life was good for those who did not try to fight the government. In fact, there are those who claim that the Marcos era was a golden age for the Philippines, characterized by booming infrastructure and a tiger economy. In this case, we examine the data from the 1960s to the end of the 1980s with the goal of rigorously assessing the truth of these claims. No matter where one's political sympathy lie, a look at the numbers can give us an object idea of the status of the Philippine economy under Marcos and the mark that his rule left on our country. One of the first indicators that may point to the economic impact of the Marcos era is the change in poverty levels after his administration. The following graph provides us with the percentage of poor families in the Philippines and by region, comparing the data from 1965 when Marcos first took office, 1971 right before Marcos declared martial law, 1975 in the middle of martial law, and 1985 right before the EDSA revolution.
The graph named Total Employed Labor Force. The first graph shows that during the pre-Marcos regime, the total employed labor force was at a significant number of 12,000. As years passed by, during the reign of Marcos, the total employment labor force has risen exponentially throughout his administration, which implies that during the Marcos administration's implementation of martial law in 1972, employment was at its peak that reached to approximately 20,000 total employment labor force during the year of 1985. So that is it for the total employed labor force graph. So as you can see here, in about 1972, the graph shows it is increasing and increasing until its peak in 1985. Graph is named the population million people. In the second graph, there are 35 million people in the pre-Marcos regime. As you can see, there are more or less or exactly 35 million people in about the years 1960. As years go by, the number of people increases due to higher death rates, leading to higher birth rates. So it resulted for impoverished areas seeing large booms in population. So again, in about after 1960s, after 1965, the rising of the population exponentially grew higher and higher.
In the third graph, it shows that the poverty rate peaks at 45% of 1965, pushes forward to 14% of 1970, and at its pinnacle during 1975 at 55%. That is a triple jump that signals the poverty rate is likely heading steep. For the scatter plot and line plot, there is an increase of employment, population, and poverty rate during Marcos era. Therefore, it indicates that there is a linear relationship between the three variables.
The last graph shows the percentage change from 1956 to 1986, where 1965, when Marcos first took responsibilities, 1971, just right before Marcos declared martial law, and 1985, right before the EDSA revolution. The blue line in the graph represents the employed labor force, the broken lines represents the population per million, and the dotted lines represents the poverty in rate. The graph indicates that the employment labor force and population per million is about as the same percentage, and the poverty percent depicts a lower percentage during those years.